So as I began to think about, what I've learned over the past years, what really excites me about work, and what I think matters in today's workplace, these two folks came to mind as individuals I would love to have a conversation with. And I think that many of you felt the same way because you're all here joining us today, and I'm happy to have you be a part of the conversation. And recently I had read a quote from Jack Hanna. I know he was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but there was a quote his daughters had released that said, "You have to touch the heart to teach the mind." And I really do think it speaks to his own approach to environmental conservation, but more importantly, I think it speaks to your approach, Bev, and your approach, Peter, in working with people and working with organizations. And Bev, I know you just released your 6th edition of Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. Congratulations. So I'm curious, what does love have to do with it after all? Why is love in the workplace so important? When you could have picked any title for a book, you actually had the gumption to put the word love in it. So why does that matter in today's work environment, really now more than ever?
Well, it's interesting. We had a really fight for the word back in 1999. And because I remember the publisher said, well, it's going to be in the business section of the bookstore, and who's going to bring home a book with love in the title? And we insisted that it was the only word that stood for everything else. Recognize, notice, say thank you, reward, show that there's a person there and that you recognize them. And in fact, on the back of the book, it has said, admit it, you love them, even if you don't use that word.
Yeah.
They are your talented team.
Yeah.
And so I have fallen more in love with the word love over the 20 years.
Yeah.
So see hearts on my...
I love the heart shirt, duly noted, as well as the necklace. I looked in my cabinet. It didn't have a heart necklace for you today, so I have to get one. Well, thank you, Bev. And Peter, having read Flawless Consulting and now being a facilitator of Flawless Consulting for several years, one of the things that I've learned is really important in the program. It's not just about doing the technical aspect of the work, but it's about building those strong relationships. And you can't do that if there's not a little bit of love there too. So as you thought about the conversation with Bev today and you said yes to this dialogue, why is it so important for us to be thinking about work differently, especially given all of the changes that are happening?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with Bev. It's a radical thought in the corporate world to believe that relationships really matter and matter for the business. And I think what Bev and I have done is spend our lives trying to give form to that belief. And the essence of relationship is reciprocity. Call it what you want, and why not call it love? And I think what Bev is wonderful at is giving form, structure, specifics. The book has 26 steps. I don't think I've walked 26 steps, let alone. And so I really think that's why I wanted to call this. What's love got to do with it? Well, without love, all that's left is technology, efficiency, order, structure, predictability. And the world loves that because it doesn't involve that costly thing called a human being. And so I think both of us have tried to give shape and form to that. And for some strange reason, despite our crazy titles, I wrote Flawless Consulting, and they said, "What do you call it?" And I said, "I'm not calling it flawless. Are you crazy?" But how arrogant that is. I don't want to expose my arrogance. And I said, "How do you pick a book title?" And they said, "Well, you want a title. When people see it on a shelf, they reach for it. So you want to sell the book, or you want to have a title you're happy with?" And I said, "Got it. Sell the book."
Well, and Bev and Peter, I think it's safe to say that both of you have indeed, sold some books. And between the two of you, I think I counted over 10 books that you have both authored or co-authored. since you've, began writing. So just kind of at the highest level, as you think about your own growth as thought leaders, what have you seen kind of change or evolve over time, and what, surprisingly so, remains the same? Bev, you first.
I have this saying that what's new is old. Really, I could find it somewhere in my files that someone said it eons ago, and that what's old, if you blow the dust off, and that's about all you have to do, is new. And I haven't written a book with that title yet, but one of these days, I intend to.
Good.
And now I forgot your question.
Well, it's all good. Yeah. So what is really the same and what's different, as you've kind of worked in this field for many years, what is the same and what's different?
I think managers want, and Peter, you may not agree, want to hang on to their talent. They know talent is everything. So they have the will, but not the skill. And maybe now they're more open to the skill of it. And maybe systems will reward managers who demonstrate love. Maybe.
Peter, what do you think?
I think about that because it's been 30, 40 years, and it's stunning to me that I thought we were eliminating fear and driving fear out of the workplace. I think we failed at that. When I connect with companies and organized places, and not just the corporate world, people are still afraid of their bosses. They still think their boss's boss is a real problem. And they still think top management should get their act together. So those are all the whimperings of a child in my mind. This is what children believe. All of us, parent selection. And so in some ways, you can say it's a time of enormous change. I don't feel it. Now, COVID, I think, has lifted the veil of how little progress we've made in really having people show up as partners and lovers in a business. And I think something going to happen now. And I think what we thought were things that Bev and I knew about, I think is going to be what leadership is going to be about, which is bringing people together and helping them fall in love with each other. See, we've been focused on me, the boss, being a wonderful coach, a parent. Bosses say, these are my people, like I own them. And we have departments called talent acquisition. And I think, I got acquired, really? When did that happen? I guess I participated in that because I interview well. And so we still have the remnants of I own my people. Mm-hmm. The loving remnant is I grow my people, but they're both the language of a parent. And I think underneath real love is to show up as equals. That's love in action. It's not just kindness and love and eye contact and smile. And I think leadership now is going to be about convening, which is and helping people find each other, not just find us as the boss.
Yeah.
I wonder, I looked up the words, Tina Turner's words. And Peter, so the first line is, what's love got to do with it? And the second is, what's love but a secondhand emotion?
I love it.
So a secondhand emotion. And maybe that's been our problem. We haven't put it first.
Beautiful. It's an expression of cynicism. I love that.
Right. And as a result, Tina says in a later stanza, I've been taken on a new direction, but I have to say, I've been thinking about my own protection.
I know.
So maybe we don't have to protect people. Some of it is they have to say, here's how to protect me. here's what I need. So it's a two-way street.
I also think that song is about her woundedness, which we all share. That's why we love the song. Yeah. And I think that what you and I have brought into the world are forms for people to be vulnerable and safe at the same time, and realize being vulnerable, being clear about what you want, being caring about the people around me is a powerful stance. It's a feminine form of power. Men don't get that. Maybe they will now with Brene Brown and other people. But I do think that vulnerability is how you have power in an uncertain, unpredictable world. Yeah. And the world is all sense of predictability, and what's going to happen in the workplace it evaporated with the virus. And if he wants to go back to work, don't want to go back to work. I just think people are going to have to claim their freedom if they're going to have a future. And that's a radical thought. And I think part of your work, Bev, and mine and others, is to encourage people to reclaim your freedom as a way of giving something important to the world.
And I think as I was preparing for our conversation, what occurred to me is the way in which perhaps we're creating the space for that in organizations is through conversations. And Peter, you talk about 6 different types of conversations in your book, Community, Belonging. And as Bev and I were chatting about the book, but we were also chatting about her work, we came to those 6 words that could possibly be engagement conversations for the new workplace. And the first conversation that you speak of in your book is around invitation. And even in Flawless Consulting, as I was thinking about the program, we as Flawless Consultants create an opportunity and an invitation to our clients, but also, Bev, in your own work, managers are creating an invitation to their employees as well. So, Peter, I wonder if you could speak more around what does it mean to, extend that invitation to inside the workplace, and outside the workplace to create, higher levels of engagement and create that sense of community.
Well, the work is so flooded with men. I keep looking for the right distance. It's flooded with mandate. We have the change management as the top makes up their mind and cascades down like a waterfall. And so we're trying to create an alternative to the notion that you had to be here. Mm-hmm. And the alternative is to say, I chose to show up. So an invitation at the essence means you have a right to say no. And a lot of what Flawless Consulting does is to say, if you want to contribute something, you have to learn that you have a right to say no. And some places you got bosses, you do what you have to do. One group, I kind of looked at them and they were all, like this. And what am I doing here? I said, how many of you chose to come here? Nobody moved. It was a workshop I'm doing. And then I said, how many of you were sent? And they all raised their hand, but they raised it with enthusiasm. I'm not, you think I'd be here if I had a choice? Hell no, man. And so that's the inversion. Love means that you have a right to say no. Love means that if you show up and come in this room, well, you're going to help create this world with us. And what Bev does is makes that concrete because we're co-creating this world. Where up to now, we thought the bosses were the creator. They were cause and we were effect. And we thought it would teach the bosses and they'll change. For me, when people complain about their bosses, I always say, why are you creating a boss like that, you fool? And I think the invitation opens the door to say it's a choiceful thing to be here, this moment, this webinar, this work, this life.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And Bev, as you listen to Peter, I know in Love 'Em, there's a lot of invitations in the Love 'Em book for managers to employees, but also in your other book, Love It, Don't Leave It, there's the invitation from the employee kind of perspective to the manager. So as you heard Peter talk and you think about your own work, what really is the invitation for you?
You know, it's interesting. The book is written according to the alphabet, and the A is for ask. And we say, although we divide all the other chapters into clusters, ask fit everywhere. So we called it a success factor. And ask means your boss has to ask you in a way that enables you to answer, and you have to ask for what you want. You know, I remember my colleague, Roosevelt Thomas, a diversity leader, passed away a number of years ago. When I said to him, well, what really is diversity? He said, diversity is the maximum utilization of the skills of the workforce. And then in my career head, I said, well, then the workforce has to say to managers, here's how to maximally use me. And the manager has to say, am I using you? Am I using all your talents? So maybe, Peter, there's the invitation. Am I using all your talents? And I talk about the stay interview, which is asking why, what can I do to keep you? Not at the exit interview. And the fear of managers of asking, what can I do to keep you, is that individuals will say something they can't deliver on, like money. And I always say, no problem. Tell the truth. I can't deliver on that. What else is important? And so I think the invitation is critical. And sometimes we think we're inviting, but we do it so densely that the other person doesn't even get that there's an invitation there.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying, because exit interviews are useless as far as I'm concerned. It's nice. I used to do them with my first job at Exxon. And so for the first 6 months, I listened to all these people and I thought, what am I doing here? You know, but I think the stay, that's a beautiful way of thinking. And the questions are so simple. But if you're the manager, you think if they have a question, I have to answer it. That's what's changing. All right. In this world of uncertainty, the end of offices, New York, everybody's dying to get offices back because we need customers. But in this world, a good answer for a leader is to say, I don't know. What's going to happen to me? What am I going to do if I go back to the office? Suppose I stay home. I need more space. I need a bigger house. House prices are through the roof. And the boss says, I don't know what's going to happen to you, but that's your job to know what's going to happen. Yes, it was. But after March of 2020, I gave up that job. I don't know what the hell's going to happen to me. Why do you think I have a stiff neck? I'm looking up to, I don't even think top management. I'm looking to God. What's going on in my world? And that to me is the anguish and the beauty of people having choice.
Right. You know, I'm working on something now titled, Where Will I Sit and Where Will I Fit? And I think that's on everybody's mind.
And who can answer that? I would say, where do you want to sit and what do you want to fit into? You know, grow up. And the parent-child contract has been violated. That social contract. I think it's hard. It's hard with people in the middle and early in their life, and they're living in a mess. Well, now what do you want to do? Rather than saying, what are you going to do as a company to provide me a future that I had in mind? And it's exciting, but leadership has got to be willing to say, I don't know.
Right.
What do you mean, don't know? I don't know. I'm scared.
Well, and it's interesting as both of you are speaking, I think that really lends itself to the next conversation, right? That is all about possibilities. So the second conversation is about possibilities. And Bev and Peter, that's exactly what you're talking about, which is possibilities. Understanding that and what those possibilities look like moving forward could be very different. So, Bev, kind of touching on what you had just mentioned, what is a conversation going to look like in the future around possibilities in the development? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? What are options might be available to you?
And and possibilities has been a big thing for me. I wrote Up Is Not the Only Way in 1982. Flawless Consultant came out in 1981. So you can tell that Peter and I are not spring chickens. But possibilities, I think the most important letter in the word is the S on the end. And I've always said, career-wise, up is only one of the many ways to grow and move. And finally, now there are a lot of tech companies saying we have to have more talent mobility. Well, we've always had to have that. And maybe now, maybe that's a good sign, Peter. People are looking at talent mobility more seriously than ever. And I think the more possibilities I have, the more leverage I have in my world, in my career.
Yeah. And Peter, I know you talk about possibilities, focusing on possibilities versus problems. And in many ways, it lends itself to this conversation that we're having today about what engagement looks like moving forward. So really, how will that conversation around possibilities look for folks moving forward? How can they use it to help them?
It's a mind. Most people put together to solve problems. And if you don't leave the meeting with a list, you feel depressed. And I always make a list of those things I really don't want to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to write them down. If I liked them, I could remember them. But I think the distinction here is between whether you are a declaration of a possible future, whether it's promotion is the smallest aspect of your future.
Yeah.
I think after the pandemic, the reality is upward mobility. There's no place to go. Blockchain organizations now have got 6 employees and 10,000 contractors. Mm-hmm. Where do you go up? You want 2 people report to you? Wow, your mom will be proud of that. So I think the possibility is say, well, why don't I live in and become a possibility that I choose, that I imagine who I want to be in the world, not just where I want to go in the world. And this crisis confronts us. Who do I want to be in the world? Rather than treating life as a problem to be solved. I mean, of course, there's problems, ain't going to solve them. But life as a problem to be solved doesn't create an alternative future. And I think we're all longing for a future distinct from the past. The only people that want to go back to the old normal are people who are right on top, doing very, very well.
Right. And Peter, I think there are more possibilities available than I even let myself see. In Levum, I talk about being opportunity minded or opportunity blinded, and being an opportunity whiner or an opportunity miner. I love making things rhyme, but people, I think, are more apt to go, oh, woe is me, we just restructured again, instead of, oh, great, let me see who's moved where so I can learn more about what they want.
And that's why you need love. See, we live in such an individualistic world, self-made, man. Okay, that if I don't feel connected, if I don't feel close to, I have a circle of support, really, all those possibilities seem too dangerous to me. And so I can't get anywhere without you. And it's a conversation with God. It's the same as the time it's a conversation with top management or with employees, so what's the point? Where am I headed? And the church, somebody mentioned in the chat, has the same issue right now. It's been such individualistic. Every church now needed a paid professional to talk to God. Instead of lined up on Sunday morning and wait till the professional gets up there and interprets God for me. I thought God's been pretty clear up to now. But I think our relationship, I need a support system, a peer support system, not a boss support system. I'll take the boss as a lover, take it every time. But I need a peer support system for me to imagine that I can create a life a little different than what I have now, and even at work. And I think work has the most potential, the workplace, to make a real difference in the world, because it knows how to organize itself, it knows how to focus, it knows how. And so I think possibility. It takes courage and faith, and I don't know how to train that.
Well, and I think, and part of what both of you mention is important, is ownership, right? So it's another conversation to have, which is ownership as well as even dissent, so how do those two types of conversations create the space for possibilities to emerge? Because, certainly I have to own my career. I have to own my satisfaction. I have to own seeking those possibilities. And I probably have to be prepared for others maybe not always being on the same side, right? as me in that regard. So, Peter, as you think about, moving into that space where we're trying to create this new shift in how we think about work, and it has the greatest opportunity for change. Say more about, ownership and dissent.
All of them are into the same room. So anyone you take is going to get you there. You don't have to remember 6. Almost too many to remember. The idea of ownership is just stop blaming, please. Can we just end blame in the workplace? Every meeting I go to, people say, how did we get here? What do you mean how we get here? I came down the hall in those days. What do you mean how I get here? I zoomed in, and everybody wants to look back, and they want to know who's responsible, and it's always somebody not in the conversation. To own means that I am a creator of my own experience and the world around me. No matter how harsh the world is, no matter how much suffering there is in the world, I can always have a conversation about what's my participation in that, what's my contribution to that. I think leadership and ownership of businesses and organizations, all they want is for their employees to say, this place is mine to create. Doesn't mean license, doesn't mean do your own thing. It just means that blame never took us anywhere. And the more you blame people, afterwards you feel more helpless than you ever had in your life. And so to me, ownership is answering one question: for whatever you're concerned about, what's your contribution to having created this issue? Mm-hmm. And it's life-changing. It's a doorway to my freedom. And of course I'm scared. If you're not scared, you're not paying attention.
And Bev, how about you? As you listen to Peter talk and thinking about ownership in your own space when you work with leaders and managers and employees around engagement and career.
The word ownership around career, I think every single organization has on their website, under their career section, you own your own career. We want you to own your own career forever. But very few ever gave the how-tos of owning your own career. They just said, go out and own it. And people didn't know how, and they still don't know how. And some organizations, and Peter, I want to applaud a number of organizations who are getting serious about showing the individual what ownership is, and showing the manager what it's like to support the ownership of the individual. And the organization is building systems, information systems, to help that along. But not everybody's into it.
I think, Bev, there are pockets everywhere of the future we want to create. And you're right, this is not a critique of organizational life or managers. And all of our best customers have been underground revolutionaries. And God bless them. And they say, well, where is this working? Well, to say, oh, they've got 20,000 people. You can't do anything with 20,000 people. But you can always find pockets of places where ownership and invitation and love are part of the conversation. And so I think that's when you say, where do I fit? Every time you do a job interview, the big question is, am I interested in them? Not are they interested in me?
Yeah.
And I've been using the word owner shift because I think it shifts. In the career discussion, it shifts, in engagement, it shifts from one person to another. And I love that you said the peer group. I think if we've learned anything from COVID, it's the importance of pods, like little groups that get together and know each other well and know that, you're taking care of yourself. Maybe we need more career pods and ownership pods. Who knows?
Well, I would love to continue listening to both of you, but I think in the spirit of invitation and commitment, what I'd like to do is invite everyone on the call to get engaged in the conversation too. We'd love for you to have a conversation about the question you see here on the screen, which is, what is the story you keep telling about your own lack of engagement or loss of love? So maybe it's something that isn't necessarily part of your life today, but it's been a part of your life in the past. But what is that story that you keep telling about your lack of engagement or loss of love? Before we end, there's one final conversation that we haven't talked about, and it's the gifts conversation, which is the idea that, we spend a lot of time maybe talking about problems. We may spend a lot of time talking about possibilities, but sometimes what we don't do enough of is recognizing the gift that others bring to the group, to the conversation, to the environment. So I thought it would be fun to end the call today with Bev and Peter to give you an opportunity to say thanks for the gifts that your colleague brought to the call today. So Bev, would you like to start?
Bring anything. No, I was thinking, and I told Peter this, my younger self would have said, I'll never go on with Peter because he's got the quick answer to everything and I don't. And the elder me said, oh, what the hell? And I'm glad that I said that because it's been fun. And I just wanted to leave the audience because we keep talking about how do we show it. And I've always believed there's a 3-step way to show love. You recognize, I see this in you. And Peter, I see how much you've grown over the 40 decades. And you still have the same old, but some great new. Recognize. The second step is you recognize, you verbalize. And I realize I just did. And the third step is you mobilize. So talk more, Peter, about what we have to offer.
Stop on by. I know. I love listening to you, Bev, because you give beautiful language to the concrete. You give order to things that are hard to grab. And you care about careers. I cared about careers so much that I quit when I was 26. And it makes me wish I'd had a career and had you to be around me. You just have a beautiful form of language and you just connect. There's something so accepting and connecting with you, both for its boss or subordinate or anything that you touch. It's just a real embrace to be with you, Bev. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Bev and Peter, for saying yes to the opportunity today, for saying yes to the conversation. We'll be sending out some follow-on communications, some questions. Good engagement requires good questions, so we'll send you some questions. For those of you who are listening in, be watching your email for that. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions of us and how we can help. And for myself, thank you guys for being here. It was a real privilege and an honor to be able to facilitate this conversation with you.